Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. So today our group is going to present experiment for frictional force. Before that, let us introduce ourselves first. I am Athirah.
My name is TISYA.
And my name is AMANY.
The objective of this experiment is to determine the coefficient of static friction of different surfaces.
Introduction. Friction is the force that resists the relative motion of one surface in contact with another. There are two types of friction, which is static and kinetic. Static friction is the friction that acts on an object that is at rest, while kinetic friction is the friction that acts on a moving object.
Apparatus. What we need is wooden block, rubber band, 50-gram masses, 10 Newton spring scale, string, and tabletop.
Procedure. The mass of wooden block was measured and recorded as m. The apparatus were set up as shown in figure. The tabletop was made sure to be stable and horizontal to the ground. The wooden block was attached to the spring scale with a string. They were placed horizontally on the tabletop. The rubber side was made sure to face downward. A m equal to 50-gram mass was placed on the wooden block. The spring was pulled slowly. Once the block started to move, the spring scale's reading was recorded.
Step 4 and 5 were repeated for 3 trials. Another 50-gram mass was added on the wooden block, and step 5 and 6 were repeated. The steps were repeated until total of m equal to 500-gram mass is on the wooden block. Step 1 until 8 are repeated. This time, the rubber side of the block was made sure to facing upward. The data was tabulated.
Results. Mass of wooden block with rubber surface m is equals to 30 plus minus 0.1 gram. Table 1 shows the rubber surface towards the floor.
Mass of wooden block without rubber surface m equals to 27.0 plus minus 0.1 gram. Table 2 shows non-rubber surface towards the floor.
Analysis. Number 1. Draw and label the free body diagram of the wooden block.
Second, plot graph of static friction force against normal force for the rubber surface and the non-rubber surface.
Third, use the gradients obtained from the graph to calculate the coefficient of static friction for each surface.
Number 4. Compare and discuss the coefficient of static friction obtained. Coefficient of static friction for wooden block with rubber surface is greater than wooden block without rubber surface. It is because rubber produces more frictional force than non-rubber.
Questions. First, how can anti-lock brakes stop a car in a shorter distance than regular brakes? The answer is by engaging and releasing the brakes. The anti-lock braking system, which is known as ABS, prevents wheel lockup and out-of-control skids. In braking situations where the wheels on a non-ABS equipped vehicles would lock up, ABS will generally provide shorter controlled stopping distance.
Number 2. From your experiment, which material has the highest coefficient of static friction? Does this agree with your hypothesis? What do you think determines the coefficient of static friction? Material that has the highest coefficient of static friction is the wooden block with rubber surface. This agrees with my hypothesis since the wooden block with rubber surface has the highest coefficient of static friction than wooden block without rubber surface.
Number 3. Once the mass begins to slide, does it move smoothly or does it undergo stop and go motion? Explain the motion. The mass undergo stop and go motion because of friction. Thus, the velocity is decreasing.
Conclusion. In this experiment, we can determine the coefficient of static friction of different surfaces, which is rubber surface towards the floor and non-rubber surface towards the floor. The coefficient of static friction for the wooden block with rubber surface is 0.1, while the wooden block without the rubber surface is 0.35. From this experiment, we learned that friction is a force that resists motion when the surface of one object comes in contact with the surface of another. We also learned that some factors affecting the frictional forces, which is the texture of the surface and the amount of force impelling them together. We also learned that if the wooden block is placed flat against top table, the frictional force will be equal to the weight of the object.
That's all from us. Thanks for watching.